Hello, my name is Sam Feltham. I'm the Director of the Public Health Collaboration and welcome to the PHC Virtual Conference 2020. The coronavirus has changed all of our lives, but where there's an obstacle, there's also an opportunity. And that opportunity comes in the guise of this virtual conference. Earlier this year, we had to postpone our two main events, the annual conference and the Real Food Rocks Festival, until next year. These events allow us to connect, learn and grow, but they also help us raise crucial funds for the PHC to continue. With that in mind, and before we let the next presenter speak, this virtual conference is 100% free for all. But if you find the content valuable today, then please consider donating £2 or whatever you can afford through the Total Giving website via www.phcuk.org/donate. Or if you're in the UK, you can simply text PHC to 70660 to donate £2 directly from your phone. We hope you enjoy the conference from wherever you are in the world, and be sure to get involved in the civil conversation on the comment section here on YouTube or via the hashtag PHCVCon2020 on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for your support, take care and stay safe.
Hello. I'd like to talk to you today about the role that weight loss therapy plays in helping to lift food addiction and sugar addiction from either yourself or patients, clients, friends, family, whoever that might be. I'm actually talking from a very personal perspective. I've been a sugar addict for as long as I can remember, certainly for as long as I've been able to pinch my sister's sweeties. So we're talking way back in the mist of time, longer than I had an understanding that I was a sugar addict. For sure, I had no idea that I had a sugar addiction going on. So I've actually been a complementary therapist for 25 years, near enough, and I've been a hypnotherapist for the last 15. I studied in nutritional therapy 20 odd years ago, and I suppose you might say I've got a very geeky interest in the nervous system. What I have done over the years is put a lot of these skills together in creating a process, really, that I work through with clients and group members of weight loss therapy that helps them to lift food addiction, get rid of food habits and eating habits that keep them in a cycle of addiction that they can be stuck in for years and years. So the process begins by having a very deep understanding of what is going on and taking away a lot of the confusion that we've had around weight loss and food habits and sugar addiction over the years. There's been a very common myth that we are emotional eaters and that, it's quite complex psychology that goes on, and that's what drives eating habits and sugar addiction. But actually, in my experience, it has been a real revelation for me to be able to put together a system that helps clients understand that it's a very, very simple process, actually. It's very physical, and it all starts in the nervous system. It all starts in our biological programming. And this is where sugar addiction actually lives. It lives in the very deepest part of our biological programming. We are programmed to seek sugar out. It is a rare rocket fuel. It is something that our bodies were designed to burn as a starburst of fuel. Back in the times when we were living in hostile circumstances, this starburst of fuel would help us to run away from predators, or indeed chase down our prey, or give us a huge burst of energy to be able to move for miles and miles to find new territory. So we are actually programmed to seek sugar out. We are at the mercy of that programming as well, because this programming is our fight or flight. It is our survival programming, and it is the deepest programming that we have by an absolute mile. Nothing touches it. So I know that a lot of you are already aware of what the fight or flight response is the mechanism that it is. But just to sum up so that I can add to the understanding a little bit more deeply of where it actually fits in the role that it plays when it comes to food addiction. So you have fight the dinosaur. I know there were no dinosaurs around when we were around. I've had that pointed out by children before, but you know what I mean. So fighting whatever it is that we need to bring down, or the flight aspect of the nervous system message, which is to run away from whatever predators there might be. And then we've got the third element, which is fright, which is hiding, which is making ourselves very small physiologically. The fright element is known as the freeze element, where we hide, we make ourselves small, our throat closes up, the brain freezes, and we become very, very quiet inside. Physiologically now today, it's a response that we have towards public speaking. And it's a dreadful sensation. It's a really, really scary feeling. It's a dreadful feeling. It's feared more than death. Public speaking is the number one fear. It is feared more than death, because it's that sense that we're being looked for, that we're being seen by this predator who's just about to pounce on us. So it's a very as far as the physiological response is concerned, the fight or flight response is the most dominant response that we have, because it's our survival. So these three aspects to it: fight, flight, and fright. However, there is another element, there is another aspect to this this physiological response that we really, really don't talk about very much, but it's an absolutely integral part of our survival mechanism, and it's the reaching mechanism. So that is reaching for the thing that either comforts or gives us pleasure. And it is actually part of our survival. The comfort and pleasure response is part of our survival. It is just as important to comfort ourselves, to give ourselves a sense of deep pleasure, as it is to get away from predators. It might not seem it, but it actually is. So this fight or flight response, which is run by a gland in our brain, it's called the amygdala, this little amygdala. As I say, I'm sure a lot of you know about the little amygdala. But the thing about the amygdala is that it is the most dominant gland that we have in our brain by a mile. And it is a gland. There is no reaction with it whatsoever, apart from instantaneous reaction. There is no logic, I should say, just instantaneous reaction. So the amygdala takes this photo of a threatening moment, whatever that threat might be, and then it plays it back to us. So it sends the threat message via the nervous system. So I think it's quite important to point out that the nervous system, the nerve messages are the speed of light. It's the fastest thing in the universe. There's nothing faster than our nerve messages, which is why the survival mechanism is so elegantly, beautifully designed. It's the best design in the universe, because your amygdala picks up perceived threat. And these days we're often talking perceived, not actual threat anymore. We don't have the same hostile environment. But our amygdala, being the gland that it is, has no logical awareness of this. Our amygdala is not caught up with the comfortable state of affairs that we live in today. So what happens still, because it is the most dominant gland, it is survival, it sends this threat message via the nervous system, speed of light, into the solar plexus. Now, the solar plexus is a huge bundle of nerves. I mean, we're talking, the biggest bundle of nerves that we have in the body, sort of yay big. I don't know if you can see that properly, but okay. So this is in your, in your area where your ribs are, in your lower ribs. This threat message is like a blaring kind of a, hugely loud message for people that have panic attacks. It is utterly overpowering. Anxiety, stress, pressure. This threat message is a bar, kind of a warning message that we are not supposed to ignore. In fact, we're not supposed to be able to override it in any way whatsoever. It's survival. It's far too important for us to be able to override. And so what happens is, if you think about, if we did have a predator running towards us at 100 miles an hour, we can't consciously override our decision around that. We don't stop to wonder if it's a vegetarian or a meat eater. That's not what happens. Our amygdala says, scram, bang, run. 10 times quicker than we can consciously think about this. And this is why we can often jump when we have somebody clap us on the shoulder and we've turned around and we see that we already know them, but it's too late. We're jumping because this is how quickly our amygdala reacts, lightning speed. So this lightning speed reaction that gets us to either run away from predators, to fight them, or to hide from them, but also to reach for the thing that comforts us or gives us pleasure. This is triggered by the starvation mechanism, because your amygdala will never let you starve to death. And the starvation mechanism that is run by the nervous system beneath our conscious attention lives in our body. It is a physiological response. And it is triggered, in fact, it's triggered in 3 ways. The starvation mechanism is either triggered when we eat sugar because of the way that our blood sugars behave. We eat processed carbs because they're designed that way. Processed carbs are designed to be hidden from our brain so that we keep on eating them, so that we pass the bliss point that we all know about, this bliss point that's designed by the processed food industry to bypass the satiety hormones, and by being on a weight loss diet, as in a fat loss, as in low fat, low calorie diet. The starvation mechanism triggered by the amygdala is an intrinsic component of being on a fat reduction, as in a low fat, low calorie diet. And the funny thing is, this is what the weight loss industry knows about so many people who go on these low fat diets, is that really the reaching mechanism triggered by the amygdala is an integral part of it, because our amygdala will never let us starve. So for a little while, some people are able to keep a very, very strong lid on this absolutely overriding urge to reach for food and put it in their mouths. And of course, this reaching mechanism is the speed of light. So we're looking at a lizard with its tongue out, it's in for many people before they've even thought about it. So they can keep a lid on it for a little while, but eventually there will come a moment when that self-control, that power over the amygdala, that absolute motivation to subdue the amygdala let slip for just a second. So for a lot of people, it's when they've lost the weight, or when they've when they've put pounds on, when they get on the scales and they've put weight on, they have this permissive thinking then that kicks in, that gets them to reach for the calories, and they will make up for those calories and then some, because the amygdala has been triggered into thinking that they've been in a starvation situation, and so therefore it will make them eat more than they need in case they go into the starvation mode again, in case they go through another period of starvation. Obviously, this happened, for a very good reason when we were in a hostile environment, and we may well have not eaten for days, and then as soon as we do come across, we walk for days, trek for days, come across a place where there's plentiful food, we're going to eat and eat and eat as much as we can to store that food ready for the next time. So again, this is part of our very deep biological programming. Now, the thing about this biological programming, as I say, it lives in the body. But more than that, it does not live in the realm of the conscious mind. It does not live up here. Not at all. It lives in a deeper part of our mind, the subconscious mind. So the subconscious, obviously the beneath conscious part of our mind, is the part of your mind that runs your body's systems. So it runs your digestive system, your heartbeat, your nervous system, your hormonal secretions, your all of your organs. Everything in your body, your whole body system, is run by your subconscious. And there are a lot of conversations now around the idea, I would say, we can call this a fact because it is borne out so many times, that your body is your subconscious. Your subconscious is your body. And your subconscious, your body, runs a good 95% of your day. You're not consciously running your day. Your body is running your day. Your subconscious is running your day, and it is running it through habit. Habit is a somatized set of behaviors that start out being something that we consciously do. So, as a good example, when we're little, we learn how to tie our shoelaces, and while we're practicing, we're paying it a lot of conscious attention. And then once we get the habit right, but once we get the the process right, once we've learned how to tie our shoelaces, what happens is it becomes a somatized process. You don't think about it anymore, so that then you can consciously get on with the stuff of your day. So your body does it for you, and all the way through life we build up this skill set, of habitual processes that we have. Driving the car is a very good example. We don't notice we're driving the car. We don't notice every conscious gear change, looking in the mirror. We do when we're first learning. We have to think about what gear to be in, what lane to be in, and eventually it becomes a subconscious process. So this is how our body, through habit, runs our day. And this really shows how powerful habit is. And we do ourselves a disservice when we forget the power of habit, because habit is meant to run our day. It is not meant to be a conscious process. There's been a few good authors around the psychology, the physiology of habit. Charles Duhigg wrote a brilliant book called The Power of Habit. Malcolm Gladwell was written about it a lot as well. Habit is just such a deep, integral part of our circuitry. And the way that habit works, it's a 3-step process. So you have trigger, so whatever it is that triggers our habitual response. And then you have routine, which is the part where we go through the habit, and then we get outcome, which is how it makes us feel afterwards. So most habits are actually driven by the outcome of creating dopamines, cascades of dopamines, which is a pleasure response. So a really good example for a lot of people these days is picking up the phone to look at Facebook. And lots of people don't want to pick up the phone and look at Facebook, but they can't seem to be able to stop themselves. It just happens. And this is because it's not conscious anymore. Your body does it for you. It's kind of laid in this circuitry. So what happens is the trigger is that, I wonder if I've got any notifications, let's say, that thinking process. So quick, though, that you barely actually think that thought. It's more of a kind of a reaching process, because you reach for the phone. That's the trigger. You reach for the phone. And then the routine is you press the little blue F. And then the outcome is a momentary, a transitory cascade of pleasure hormones, dopamine, that make you feel nice. It's very momentary, it's very transitory, it's over and done with in a flash, and then you go about your day. But the trouble is, this trigger, because Facebook is designed to be addictive, this happens over and over and over again. This is an addictive process. Your body just will do it without you even thinking about it. So this is how you build up an addictive relationship to all kinds of things. It's all about the way that the habit works. So when you bring this back to food, and you think about the fact that we are biologically programmed to seek sugar out, and we can trigger food addiction via the amygdala by either eating the sugar, the processed carbs, or not eating enough calories. We trigger this addiction deep within the amygdala that takes this photo of the threatening moment, this sense of perceived threat, creates the reaching mechanism. It becomes a habit. And it really doesn't take long before we build up a store of habits around the addictive eating cycle, the addictive, whether it is addictive savory carbs or whether it's the addictive sugars. The habits are often the same. It sounds like we're a done deal, but actually I think being able to recognize that it is actually very, very physical, it begins and ends in the nervous system, means that we can actually use tools to be able to do something about that, which is, where weight loss therapy comes in. The first part of the process in good weight loss therapy, I would say, is to feed yourself well. And we all know about that because we all do this lovely, lovely way of eating where we feed our body the fats, the proteins, enough calories. There is a sense that we are soothing the amygdala. So food becomes 50% of your therapy by sending this message to the amygdala, as we do in lots of different ways via, the hormonal messages, nervous system messages. We send this message to the amygdala: fed. We're fed. And it's a very, very different message from the craving message that triggers the reaching mechanism. So, and this is the power of the craving message, and this is how food overrides it. As I said earlier, the threat message is a very, very big, loud, blaring message that absolutely we do not ignore. It stops us in our tracks, and we have to obey this threat message. However, the reaching mechanism has a very different driver. There's a very different, very subtle message going on in the nervous system there, because its job isn't to get us to run away from something, to be repelled by something. Its job is to get us to reach for something and bring it towards us, bring it towards our bodies. So the driver is a very subtle one. And so it stimulates, it triggers this crave message. It is in the solar plexus where the amygdala's threat message is, but it is a very, very subtle little message. Some people say it feels like a tickle, or like a little pulling sensation, like a little kind of an emptiness kind of a feeling. It's very subtle, and this is the power of it, because we don't realize it's there. We think it's us. We think it's our thinking. We think that we are somehow in control of that message, which is where we've tripped up for the last 50 years, really, in being able to control our food habits and our addictions, because we've believed that it's here. And it's not. It's in our solar plexus. So this little tickle that stimulates the reaching mechanism before we've even thought about it. We have persuasive thinking that supports this reaching mechanism. So whether the persuasive thinking is, I'll start the diet on Monday, it's exactly the same whether it is sugar, food addiction, or whether it is, the meaner chemicals. The persuasive message is the same. I'll start the diet on Monday, or, I've worked hard today, or whatever that persuasive thinking is. And unfortunately, today in society, we have got persuasive thinking. We've got this permissive thinking, 60 million people saying the same thing. We're all agreeing that sugar's lovely and we all deserve a treat. And what about Cake Bake Friday? And, if we don't give our children treats, then, somehow we're not good parents. We have very, very deep persuasive thinking that supports this idea that we can reach for the sugar and put it in our mouths. So that kind of feeds into the reaching mechanism. It supports it to a certain extent, but it doesn't drive it. The driver is the amygdala. The driver is this little message in the solar plexus beneath conscious attention, a subconscious message in the body that gets the body to reach for this food, the sugar, processed carbs, before you've even thought about it, really, very deeply. So how do we jump in and change that messaging system? Well, this is the part of it that's really, really very simple, because once we recognize that it isn't us, that it isn't about not being motivated enough, it isn't about being strong-willed enough, it's not about being a greedy pig. Actually, we are at the mercy of a biological driver that is designed to make us eat sugar and put us into an addictive cycle that can last forever, because it isn't conscious and it isn't it has no logic whatsoever. It's this addictive cycle, this repeated habit pattern that we get into. And this is where the second part of the therapy comes in. So the first stage of weight loss therapy is always about changing that approach to dieting, to throw the low-fat diet out the door, to ensure that the person eats enough calories, to switch on the hormones that say fed, to soothe the amygdala we've eaten. So for many of us, and I'm sure for a lot of you guys, that may well be enough. Just being able to know that you fed yourself is the most satisfying feeling. It's just a sense of deep contentment, and it is very, very soothing to the amygdala. So for many of us, if we don't have any kind of addictive relationship or any kind of, food habits that have come out of a feeling of being out of control, then that's completely fine and may well be enough. But unfortunately, for many of us, we have laid down that habit circuit in our brain. This is the way that it works. Once you've created a habit, it is there. It never goes. I mean, it's the same with people who stop smoking. People always have this smoking habit circuit. It gets laid over by lots and lots of lovely positive motivation. But the first time a person has a cigarette, they are back to that habit and to the addictive craving that goes with that as well. That again, by the way, for smoking is absolutely tiny. It is a tiny, tiny craving, and therefore just as easy to knock out as sugar cravings once you know how to do it. So yes, so using food as a way to soothe the nervous system, to soothe the amygdala is 50% of the process for somebody that does have other stuff going on. But then what we're looking at is being able to knock out the addiction itself. We don't know why some people become sugar addicts and some people don't. Why some people can have a lifetime of just having a little tiny bit and they're absolutely fine, how lucky they are, how smug they are. I have no idea what that's like. Every sugar addict knows this saying, 1 is too many and 100 isn't enough, because it's the same with any addiction. So once we've actually triggered that addictive reaching mechanism for sugar, then we work on taking out insurance policies. So the second part of the weight loss therapy then is around helping people to create insurance policies against triggering this habit, the routine, and the outcome. So the old habit, as far as sugar is concerned, is reaching for the sugar. The routine is, eating it eating it by being barely even conscious that you're eating it. The routine is the temporary cascade of endorphins, the dopamine that comes with eating the sugar. So then we work on neutralizing this little message from the amygdala so that we're quiet in the solar plexus. And that is the whole key to any addictive behavior, whether it is sugar, really, whether it's heroin. I've worked with heroin addicts. I have worked with crack cocaine addicts. Yes, they need a lot of motivation and they also need a lot of dedication and other support as well. But at the nub of it, the kernel of it, is this deep, unbreakable crave cycle within the nervous system, from the amygdala to the solar plexus. Once you're quiet in the solar plexus, then you have a level playing field. Then your behavior becomes conscious. There are a couple of fantastic tools that I use in weight loss therapy for helping a person to understand this kind of subjective feeling, to really own how it feels to be quiet in the solar plexus. And once they are, then the thinking around the sugar completely changes. So much of it drops away. So much of the emotional relationship that people have to sugar, this sense that they feel like they're missing out, this sense that they can't resist it, the sense that if other people are eating it, they've got to join in. All of that becomes 100 times easier once they're quiet in the solar plexus. Once that crave sensation, that little tickle, has been knocked out, they are able to make conscious choices. And of course, if they've already decided that they want to be healthy, that they want to lose weight, that they want to break free, to liberate themselves from this horrible holding pattern of this addictive cycle, once they want to knock out obsessive, compulsive thinking about sugar, basically they've decided, of course, that they want to be free and healthy and slender, then that motivation becomes the driving force. They are the human part of them, the conscious part of them, that is then able to take forward their changes. And the same thing happens with habits as well. We can change either the triggers for habits and also the thinking habits as well, using a couple of little tools, one called TFT TFT is a percussive technique, and it is amazing. It was designed in the 50s for PTSD. There's quite a range of percussive techniques out there now. The latest is one called havening, which I have used with clients to literally lift childhood trauma, somatized trauma, straight out of the nervous system. It is incredible. Don't knock percussive techniques until you've tried them. TFT literally scrambles the message from the amygdala so that you don't receive it in the solar plexus, and you could knock out sugar cravings where they stand, right there. And you can also use the TFT as an insurance policy. So say for clients who are going out to eat with friends and they really don't want a pudding and they think they're going to give in and have a pudding and and so it goes on, then they can use this TFT in advance to knock out the sugar cravings so that when they actually come to that moment, they're good, they're quiet. And once you're quiet in your solar plexus, everything changes. The whole experience changes. We then use the hypnotherapy to gently relax the body. If you don't know how hypnotherapy works, it's really not mystical. It does work on the subconscious, but it works on this principle that once you relax the body to a state where the body is almost asleep, then the brainwave changes. The brainwaves change into the theta state, and the theta state is basically where the subconscious is able to come up to the surface. It can become very sensitized to positive suggestions, and with the consent of the client, because nothing can be done without the consent of the client, you will then give them new positive suggestions. So one of the ways that you could do this is, say, giving them a sense of how it might feel to not want sugar. So coming back to the routine of habit, which is trigger, routine, and outcome. So say in a hypnotic state where this person's very relaxed in the theta state, you'd give them the experience of imagining that they were standing in front of sugar, which it would be the routine, standing in front of, I don't know, the aisles where the chocolate is. So that's the trigger of the routine. Of the habit. And then changing the routine, the middle bit, because you can never change triggers. Triggers are always going to be there. So you change the routine. So the routine would be, while they're feeling nice and calm, to walk away. So then the outcome, again, would be this wonderful, pleasurable cascade of endorphins. But rather than it being just a momentary little tickle, imagine that sense. If somebody has never been able to refuse sugar, to have this wonderful sense, this punch in the air moment where they walk away, the cascade of endorphins, the trigger, the outcome, the cascade of dopamine goes on and on. The power that they possess is wonderful. So this is a really, really powerful motivator, and also for helping thinking habits as well. So thinking habits such as, I don't know, I've never been able to get below 11 stone is a really common thinking habit. So being able to say instead, what if this time I do get below 11 stone? And give them that experience of what that might feel like. So it's kind of very gentle reprogramming. It's very gently just, changing that operating, or jumping into the operating system and just changing that process just very slightly, but in a very positive way. And once it's done at that level in the subconscious, in the operating system, then that they are able to take that out into situations, out into the real world, out to where the triggers are, the cake bake Friday and the family feeders and eating out with friends and so on. So then these tools, people generally use hypnotherapy more than once. They generally have downloads to listen to, so they can reinforce this wonderful new reprogramming in the operating system. And of course, the longer they go through this process, the more the old habits and the old addictions tend to kind of die away. But it often takes a long time, because food is survival. Food and sugar craving and addiction, I would say, is the absolute strongest addiction that we have by a mile, because we are programmed to seek food out. Food is survival. We are not programmed, when we're born, to be addicted to crack cocaine. This is not part of our deep biological imperative. Sugar and food is. And this is what the food industry know about us. It's what the weight loss industry know about us by an absolute mile. The weight loss industry is known as a revolving door business because they know that once they've got the amygdala, once they've triggered the amygdala, you are in the holding pattern, like a plane in a holding pattern of an addictive cycle that starts first thing in the morning with this forensic, going over of what you ate the day before and how many calories and what was in it, and this intention that you set at the beginning of the day after beating yourself up to be good, and to not eat anything today and make up for the calories. And then throughout the day, because you don't eat enough calories or you had sugar or processed carbs the day before, there'll be a moment when the amygdala makes you reach for it all over again. So this addictive holding pattern, this addictive cycle can literally last forever. I literally have had clients that have been on a diet for 50 years. The misery of being at the mercy of something that they have no understanding, that they've been told that it's because they're emotional eaters, or they're just not motivated enough, or they're just not strong enough. How cruel is that? I mean, sometimes we make jokes out of these things, but actually it's a cruel trick to play on people who run their own shows, who have happy lives, who are intelligent, competent people that actually cannot control what they put in their mouths. Now, I recognize that this talk may not be for all of you, but I know from doing my talks over the years that I am pretty well sure that this will have landed for a few of you. Or if you may, as I say, you may well recognize this in other members of your family, or in patients, or in clients, however, you interact with people that you realize that may well be in that cycle themselves. So what I'd like to suggest is that if you'd like to use the tools that I've talked about, and they're free tools, you're very welcome to try them out and see what you think. If you go onto YouTube, I've got a very quick YouTube video. If you just search for TFT for sugar cravings, you'll see my photo, and it will come up with a very quick routine, probably about 10 minutes. I think it goes through the process twice, where you are able then to knock out that feeling in your solar plexus, and it's a very subjective experience. So you will actually know how that feels yourself to not crave the sugar or the processed carbs. You can use it either for the savory stuff or the sugar stuff. We know it's all the same, isn't it? So that's a very subjective experience. Also on my website, which is www.breakthrough-weight-loss, that's all one word, weight loss.co.uk. If you go onto the homepage, scroll down to the bottom, you can click there for a free weight loss hypnotherapy download, so that you can experience what the hypnotherapy feels like. It's a very relaxing process using TFT together with the hypnotherapy and our way of eating is 90% of the way towards knocking out this addictive food cycle, this eating cycle, the habits and the addiction that, even if we have been enjoying this way of eating, can still play a part in our lives. Sometimes it's binging, as food habits go, and that again is clearly part of our deep programming, and we can use the hypnotherapy and the TFT to lift that as well. Or if it is sugar, or however that manifests, I think 99% of us have got some kind of relationship with food that is not necessarily as nature intended, just because we are not living in a natural food setting anymore. The only trouble is your amygdala has no idea about that. Your amygdala is busy trying to keep you alive out on the Serengeti, or out on the plains, or in the jungle, or wherever this natural wild setting is, as far as your amygdala is concerned. So just to recap, our addictive habit circuit is run in the subconscious, in our bodies. Our body is our subconscious. The subconscious is our body. It's in our nervous system, and it's triggered by our amygdala. It is the driving, dominating, all-encompassing, all-inclusive driver of our addictive behaviors. So by jumping into that operating system with very gentle, pleasurable, pleasant techniques, by feeding ourselves well, we can actually knock out that message system where it lives in us, in our solar plexus, in our nervous system, so that we can make different choices. That's all it is at the end of the day. And we do this one day at a time, by the way, you know, and then we can use insurance policies to be able to take this out into the future and out into the real world, you know, out into the places where these triggers happen for us. Understanding about trigger, routine, and outcome means that, as I say, you can never change the trigger. Triggers will always be there. The bit that you change is the bit in the middle, the routine. And a really interesting one just to finish on. If you have got a problem with Facebook, this is how you do it. You just take the Facebook icon off of the little desktop part of your phone, put it in the apps if you must do, but take it off your phone if you possibly can, so that when you go to reach for your phone, that irresistible reaching next time, it's not there. You'll have a different routine of just putting your phone back down again. And what's the outcome? That punch in the air, cascade of endorphins. Did it? Yes. I'm in control. I'm the boss. So thank you for listening to my talk. Have a wonderful rest of the conference. I can't wait to see everybody else's videos as well. It's such a shame we can't meet in person, but hey, I'm sure we'll get to meet soon. And I'll look forward to meeting everybody, whether it's at the next Ambassadors Day or at the next conference or whenever that might be. So thank you for watching. I've been Bridgette Hamilton of the Park Hypnotherapy Centre.